How many times have you heard it? Standing at the dock, looking at those greying skies. Some old-timer squints at the horizon and says, "Barometer's dropping, son. Might as well stay home." What if I told you that is some of the absolute worst fishing advice you will ever get? Today, we're not just questioning that old myth about a falling barometer in summer being a waste of time. We are tearing it apart, piece by piece, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll start seeing those pre-storm conditions as a golden opportunity, not a reason to pack it in. We're going to uncover why the fish are actually doing the exact opposite of what you've been told for years. So let me know in the comments right now, just to get us started. Do you fish a falling barometer, or do you head for the house? Let's be honest.
Look, this belief didn't come from nowhere. It's been passed down through generations of fishermen, from grandfathers to fathers to sons. It's a simple, easy-to-remember rule of thumb. Pressure falls, fishing stalls. For decades, it was just accepted as fact. Nobody really questioned it because it seemed to make sense, and sometimes the fishing really was tough after a weather change. The problem is, it's a massive oversimplification. It's like saying all Italian food is just pizza. You miss the whole picture. This one simple, wrong idea has probably caused more fishermen to miss out on more epic bites than any other piece of advice out there. So let's set the scene. It's a hot, sticky summer afternoon. The air gets heavy, the wind picks up, and you know a storm is on the way. Most guys are loading their boats onto the trailer, but you're about to understand why you should be speeding in the opposite direction. First, let's imagine that classic scene playing out. You're at the boat ramp, and an old fella who looks like he was born with a fishing rod in his hand is tying up his John boat. He sees you getting ready to launch. He shakes his head, looks at the dark clouds building in the west, and gives you that classic line. "You're wasting your gas, kid. They won't bite when the glass is falling." He's not trying to be a jerk. He's genuinely trying to save you from a frustrating day on the water. He's sharing a piece of wisdom that he's held as gospel for 50 years. It's a powerful moment because it represents generations of accepted knowledge. But what we're going to do today is respectfully show why that gospel is flawed and how a little modern understanding can turn his wasted day into your personal best. It starts with unpacking what's really happening. So, what even is barometric pressure? Forget the complicated science lecture. Let's talk like fishermen. Imagine the air all around us has weight. It's a giant ocean of air, and it's constantly pushing down on everything, including the surface of the lake you're fishing. High pressure means there's more weight, the air is heavier, and it's pushing down harder. This usually gives us those calm, sunny, bluebird sky days. A falling barometer, or low pressure, means the air is getting lighter. There's less weight pushing down on the water. This is what happens when a storm system is moving in. Think of it like a giant, invisible foot pressing on the lake. On a high-pressure day, the foot is pressing hard. When the barometer drops, that foot is lifting off. This change, this lifting of weight, is the trigger for everything that's about to happen underwater. Now let's quickly talk about the opposite situation, the so-called good conditions. The myth says that a high, stable barometer is what you want. You know these days, not a cloud in the sky, no wind. It's beautiful and comfortable weather to be outside. You can see for miles, and it just feels like a perfect day to be on the water. And for a lot of people, that's true, but for the fish, it can be one of the toughest bites you'll ever face. The sun is bright, penetrating deep into the water, and fish, especially predators like bass and walleye, feel exposed. They tuck themselves into the thickest, darkest cover they can find. They become lazy, inactive, and very unwilling to chase a lure. So while the weather is pleasant for us, the fish are often in a neutral or negative mood. They aren't actively hunting, they're just waiting for conditions to change in their favor. Let's get back to our falling barometer. The moment the pressure starts to drop, things begin to change instantly. It's not a slow, gradual process that takes days. It is a direct signal to the entire aquatic environment. The wind often picks up, which is crucial. This wind creates surface chop, breaking up the water's surface. Think of it like pulling the blinds shut in a bright room. It reduces light penetration, which is the first thing that makes predator fish feel more comfortable and secure. They feel less exposed. They feel like they have the advantage. This subtle change in light and surface texture is the first dinner bell. It tells every bass, walleye and pike in the lake that the hunting conditions are about to get a whole lot better. They start to get ready, moving out of their deep water haunts and getting into position. Now we have to talk about the most important piece of the puzzle, the fish's swim bladder. This is the part the old-timers partially understood, but they came to the wrong conclusion. A swim bladder is basically just a little balloon of gas inside the fish. The fish uses it to control its buoyancy, allowing it to suspend at different depths without having to constantly swim up or down. It's an amazing piece of natural engineering. But think about what happens to a balloon. When you squeeze it, it gets smaller. When you release the pressure, it expands. This is exactly what happens to a fish's swim bladder. It is a flexible, gas-filled organ that is directly affected by the external pressure pushing on the fish's body. And this is the absolute key to understanding why the old myth is so wrong. So when that barometric pressure is high, the heavy air is pushing down hard on the water, and that pressure is transferred to the fish. It's essentially squeezing the fish's body, which in turn squeezes that little balloon, the swim bladder. The fish is perfectly comfortable, it can adjust. Now, when the barometer falls, that external pressure, that squeezing force, is reduced. And what happens to a balloon when you stop squeezing it? It expands. The gas inside the swim bladder expands and the bladder gets bigger. This change can create a sense of discomfort for the fish. It might feel bloated or slightly off. It's a real physical sensation for them. And this is the exact point where the old-timers' theory goes completely off the rails. They got the discomfort part right, but they got the fish's reaction completely wrong. This brings us to the great misconception. The old logic was simple. If the fish feels uncomfortable because its swim bladder is expanding, it's not going to want to eat. It's going to go sulk in a corner until it feels better. It sounds logical, right? If your stomach hurts, you probably don't want to go eat a 12-ounce steak. But fish are not humans. They are ancient, instinct-driven survival machines. Their entire existence is governed by two things: surviving and eating. They don't have the luxury of taking a sick day. That minor discomfort from their swim bladder is nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the overwhelming primal instinct that is screaming at them to feed. The falling barometer is a massive, system-wide signal that things are about to change, and that means it's time to hunt. Here is the reality of the situation. That falling barometer is nature's dinner bell. For millions of years, a rapid drop in pressure has meant one thing: a storm is coming. A storm means turbulent water, low light, and potentially difficult feeding conditions for the next day or two. Every predator fish in that lake is hardwired with the instinct to gorge itself before the front arrives. It's an eat now while you can mentality. They know that this is their prime opportunity to hunt aggressively and fill their bellies. The minor discomfort of an expanding swim bladder is a tiny price to pay for a crucial meal. The urge to feed completely overrides any other sensation they might be feeling. So while the old-timers thought the fish were hiding, they were actually getting ready for a feast. Let's really hammer this point home. It's all about instinct over comfort. A fish cannot reason. It cannot think, well, my swim bladder feels a little funny, so I think I'll skip dinner tonight and just wait until tomorrow. That's a human thought process. A fish operates on a much more primal level. Its brain is screaming one thing: pressure dropping, storm coming, find food, eat now. That's it. It is a non-negotiable biological imperative. They will push through that minor feeling of being bloated because the instinct to feed before a major environmental shift is infinitely more powerful. It is a survival mechanism that has been perfected over eons. Believing they stop eating because of a little pressure change is like believing a starving wolf would turn down a free meal because it's a little chilly outside. It just doesn't happen. And it's not just about the predator fish. Let's talk about the baitfish, the foundation of the entire food chain. The pressure change affects them just as much, if not more. They also have swim bladders and feel that same change. But more importantly, the changing light conditions and water temperature get them moving. Tiny plankton, the base of the food chain, will often rise in the water column during low light periods. The baitfish, like shad and shiners, follow the plankton to feed. Suddenly, instead of being scattered and hard to find, entire schools of baitfish become active and concentrated. They start moving towards predictable areas, like wind-blown points or weed lines. And when the food starts moving and grouping up, what do you think the predators do? So where does all this bait go? As the sky darkens and the wind picks up, baitfish often move shallower. They feel more secure in the low light and will push up onto flats or along weed edges to feed on microorganisms. A wind-blown bank is a prime location. The wind pushes the warm surface water and all the plankton against that shore, and the baitfish follow in massive schools. The wave action also stirs up the bottom, creating even more feeding opportunities for them. For an angler, this is a huge clue. If you see baitfish flickering on the surface on a wind-blown point right before a storm, you are in exactly the right place. The entire buffet has moved into a predictable, shallow water location, making it much easier for predators to ambush them. You just have to follow the food. This leads us to the most fundamental rule in all of fishing. Predators follow the prey. It is the one constant you can always rely on. A bass isn't going to sit in 30 feet of water if all the shad have moved into 5 feet of water. A walleye isn't going to suspend over a deep basin if the shiners are getting pushed up against a shallow rock pile. The predators will be there. That pre-storm feeding frenzy isn't just because the bass or walleye feel like eating. It's because their food source has suddenly become active, concentrated and vulnerable. They move in to take advantage of the easy meal. So when you see those clouds rolling in, don't think about the pressure on the fish's swim bladder. Think about the location of the bait. Find the bait and you will find the hungry predators right there with them. We've touched on it, but let's really focus on the low light advantage. A falling barometer almost always comes with heavy cloud cover and sometimes even rain. For a predator fish, this is like putting on a superhero cape. Their eyes are designed to be superior to their prey in low light conditions. They can see better in the gloom than a shad or a bluegill can. This gives them a massive tactical advantage. They can ambush their prey much more effectively. The bright overhead sun of a high-pressure day is their enemy. It makes them feel exposed and makes it easy for prey to spot them. But the dark, overcast sky of a low-pressure system is their best friend. It is their preferred hunting ground. They feel bold, aggressive, and ready to attack anything that moves. Another huge factor that comes with the clouds and wind is the elimination of surface glare. On a calm, sunny day, the surface of the water acts like a mirror. Fish can be very spooky. Your shadow, the movement of the boat, even the splash of your lure can send them scattering. But when the wind puts a chop on the water and the clouds block the sun, that mirror is shattered into a million pieces. This broken, distorted surface makes it much harder for fish to see what's happening above the water. They become far less spooky and much more willing to roam freely. They will leave the safety of their deep cover and move out onto points and flats to actively hunt. This is why a crankbait or a spinnerbait can be so deadly in these conditions. The fish are out looking for a meal and they aren't afraid of their own shadow anymore. So, knowing all this, how should you adapt your presentation? This is not the time for slow, subtle finesse fishing. The fish are aggressive, they are triggered to react. This is the time to break out the power fishing techniques. You need to use baits that cover water quickly and draw reaction strikes. Think fast-moving lures. A spinnerbait or a bladed jig burned along a windy bank is a classic choice. A squarebill crankbait crashed into stumps and laydowns can be absolutely deadly. And don't forget about topwater. The chop on the water makes a walking bait or a buzzbait an irresistible target. The fish are already looking up, they are in an aggressive mood, and that noisy lure coming across the surface is something they can't ignore. Match the fish's aggressive mood with an aggressive presentation. It's also critical to understand the concept of the feeding window. This intense prefrontal bite doesn't last all day. It is often a very short, concentrated period of incredible action. It might only last for an hour or even just 30 minutes, right as the pressure is dropping the fastest and just before the rain or the worst of the wind hits. This is the golden hour. It's why timing is everything. If you wait too long and get there after the front has already passed, you've missed it. You have to be on the water and in position when that window opens. This is where modern weather apps give us a huge advantage over the old-timers. We can see the front coming on the radar. We can time our arrival to the lake perfectly to intercept that feeding window. Let me give you a quick real-life example. I remember one time a few years back fishing a tournament on a hot July afternoon. The bite was dead. Nobody was catching anything. Around 2 o'clock we saw the sky in the west turn dark green. The weather radio started crackling about a big thunderstorm approaching. I looked around and boat after boat was firing up their engines and racing back to the ramp. They were all heading in. My partner and I looked at each other, smiled, and picked up our chatterbait rods. For the next 45 minutes, it was absolute chaos. We caught fish on almost every cast from a single wind-blown point. It was one of the most incredible flurries of action I have ever experienced. And as the first drops of rain started to fall, the bite shut off like a light switch. We had the whole lake to ourselves because everyone else believed the old myth. So what happens right after the storm passes? This is the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. After the front moves through, the sky often clears, the wind dies down or switches direction, and the barometer starts to rise again, often very quickly. This is what we call a post-frontal condition. You get those beautiful, crisp bluebird skies, and you know what? The fishing is almost always brutally tough. The fish now have full bellies. They may be dealing with the shock of the temperature change, and the bright sun puts them right back into a negative, inactive mood. This tough, post-frontal bite is what the old-timers were experiencing. They just didn't separate the during from the after. They remembered the terrible fishing after the storm and blamed the whole weather change. This is the aha moment. The crucial misunderstanding that created this entire myth. The old wisdom lumped the entire weather event into one category: bad. They didn't have the sophisticated forecasting we have now. They couldn't distinguish between the different phases of a frontal system. They just knew that after a big storm rolled through, the fishing was terrible for a day or two, so they made a simple but incorrect assumption. They blamed the falling barometer that preceded the storm, instead of the rising barometer and high pressure that followed it. They correctly identified a tough bite, but they completely misdiagnosed the cause. The falling pressure wasn't the problem, it was the party. The high pressure that came after was the hangover. They were just showing up for the hangover and telling everyone the party was awful. This brings us to the modern angler's edge. We have technology and knowledge that fishermen from 50 years ago could only dream of. We have weather apps on our phones that can show us hour by hour barometric pressure readings. We have Doppler radar that lets us see exactly when a storm will arrive, down to the minute. We no longer have to guess. We can look at the forecast, see a pressure drop scheduled for 3 p.m., and plan our entire day around being on our best spot at that exact time. We can capitalize on that short, intense feeding window with surgical precision. This knowledge transforms a falling barometer from a warning to stay home into a calendar appointment for some of the best fishing you will experience all year. It's about using information to fish smarter, not just harder. So, let's put it all together. The old-timers weren't trying to mislead us. They were working with the best information they had. They correctly observed that the fishing was often terrible after a summer storm, but they made the wrong connection. They blamed the approaching storm, the falling glass, when the real culprit was the calm, blue sky hangover that came after it. The game-changing truth, the aha moment for all of us, is that a falling barometer isn't a stop sign. It's a giant, flashing green light. It is nature's dinner bell screaming at every predator in the lake that it is time to eat, and eat now. Understanding this completely changes your approach to summer fishing. You'll never again look at a dark sky and think about going home. Instead, you'll be grabbing your crankbait rod, checking the radar on your phone, and heading straight for your favorite windblown point, knowing you're about to hit the jackpot. Thank you so much for watching. If this video just blew your mind or finally confirmed something you've suspected for years, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more myth-busting fishing content. And now I really want to hear from you. What is the biggest fishing myth you were told for years that turned out to be completely wrong? Drop it in the comments below. Let's get a great discussion going.